Do I think it's going to be hard? Yes. Do I think I need to change how I'm going to live? Yes. If you're not thinking that, you're not being realistic. I'm around both high net worth and average net worth individuals consistently, and I would say both parties express that there is an extreme change in the cost of living. And I think, honestly, unless you're making big money, when I say big money, I mean you need to be making at least $500,000 a year or more before you can almost try and pretend like you're immune to what's going on.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 50 of season 2 of the Masterkeys podcast. Thanks so much, as always, for listening. We're here trying to give you some information, trying to give you some ideas, trying to network with you guys. We are Atlantic Canada's #1 real estate investing podcast. I'm Chandler Haliburton.
I'm Neal and Andreino.
What we do for a living is we sell real estate, we invest in real estate, so we talk about all the issues that are important to us. We hope they're important to you. If you're listening in, you probably have a passion for real estate. We love real estate. It's what gets us up in the morning. It's what keeps us up late at night, which is why my voice is not great. I'm a little raspy. Had a little staff party. Got a little loose, but it was good. Whoa. What was that reaction?
I guess I left a little earlier than you did. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get right into it.
Have you watched World Cup?
A little bit here and there. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the beautiful game. It's not my thing. I like basketball.
The football.
Was that the football? No.
The football. I honestly haven't been watching it either, but I did watch some stuff about the infrastructure.
There's a big real estate component to these major events, and it's wild because oftentimes you'll see like these stadiums years later and they're just like abandoned because they were built for one use only.
Yeah, and I had a few people message me about this, so I thought we would chat about it real quick. But the main stadium, Stadium 974, when the Qatar built it,
Catchy
on
name.
top of all the crazy things, they said it's going to be a reusable stadium. So you can put it up and take it down and go take it to other places.
Shut up.
It holds 40,000 people, and that's, I think, their way of trying to mask the fact that they spent $220 billion to host. And now the largest spend in second place is $15 billion by Brazil. So this is...
So why should people care that it's reusable, though?
I honestly think it's a PR stunt. They're 15x the previous World Cup. Well, previous World Cup was Russia, which is 11 billion. So they're 20x that. The one before that was Brazil at 15 billion, and they're 15x that. But anyways,
I mean, that's bribery money is not as cheap as it used to be, I guess.
Yeah. Anyways, like I said, I have not watched it much, but I don't know if anyone knows the Wonton Don. Do you watch Wonton Don from Barstool Sports? Yeah. So I saw him. He posted about the village. What's it called? The World Cup village, the fan village. Sorry. Yeah, fan zone. And basically, I mean, they made a good effort, and for the timeline that they had and everything that goes into it, it's great. But basically, across the desert, they just have like thousands of like shipping containers that they turn into hotel rooms, and it's just a little bathroom.
Those are also reusable.
And a bedroom. Well, that's the concept, is that it's all can be taken off site, reused at different places. But his was like leaking, and he just had like an air conditioning unit plugged in, just sitting in the middle of the room, blowing on his face. And it's like a windowless shipping container box in the middle of the desert, and there's just rows and rows and rows and rows.
How much did you say it was?
They spent $220 billion. And again, that's 15x the next highest ever. Like, it's not like on average everyone spends $100 billion and now they spend $200. It's like on average everyone spends $10 billion, and then somehow Qatar has spent $220 billion.
And is the reason because they were maybe behind in infrastructure otherwise, or?
You wouldn't think so, because they're like,
they
got all the crazy stuff that's built, and also from what I understand, they don't necessarily pay for all the labor properly. So I'm surprised that they're able to spend that much.
Not many severance packages there.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so there's a lot of overhead there, a lot of soft costs in the construction budget there.
Someone who owns the construction companies did okay.
Line items just say some for me, some for you. Yeah. Those are two major line items. That's wild, man.
Yeah. Anyways, I thought I would ask, like I said, I'm not following the games much, which I should be, but someone sent that in, and I was honestly blown away by the fact that you can spend $250 billion on a few weeks of football.
Yeah, I mean, it makes the money I spend in a little weekend to Montreal seem cheap by comparison. Who had more fun, though? That's the real question. Who had more fun? No, that's... I mean, those things become these weird, big real estate investment plays, but all short-term, no long-term return. Like so many of these places, even here, you know, some of the infrastructure we built in Montreal and Alberta for major sporting events, it's been good, I guess, but it ages.
In
not great.
opposition to Stadium 974, not opposition, but in comparison to Stadium 974, they referenced Stadium O in Montreal, and it took 30 years to pay it off. And now to this date, they're still like they had to do a new roof, and so really it got extended and amortized over 45 years. And the costs have been out of this world. And it's like,
is that where the Expos played? I think it's where the Expos played, isn't it?
Man,
I missed the Expos.
I don't know, but like, anyways, yeah, that was their comparisons that Montreal had done a 30-year mortgage on the stuff that they built, and it took that long to pay it off, and where there really benefits for 30 years to come. To be honest, I'm almost an advocate to say that there might have been. It's not tangible for you to be able to evaluate, but if you look at the people that have moved there, and then what comes out of that as it goes down the line.
Right. You mean like new people moving to Montreal, then
and making Montreal a world stage, and then allowing it to become a host for further more, whether it be concerts or more events or
like
more.
Would the world have Celine Dion if it wasn't for the stadium? I don't know. So,
anyways, I want to staying on the sports topic.
Yeah,
this one is a little bit more near and dear. I'll say, Canadian rower Carling Zeeman says her dream of winning an Olympic medal for Canada is being put in jeopardy by the Ontario Landlord and Tenant Board.
Oh my God. All right.
So
explain that one to me.
Carling is saying that she's a 2-time Olympian.
Mm-hmm.
The Ontario board is getting in the way because they're operating so slowly that she may not be able to compete in another Olympic
Why?
games.
Is she a tenant or a landlord?
She is a landlord.
Okay.
And so she bought a property and rented it out, and was using the extra rental income to subsidize the money she makes as a Canadian athlete, because we give Canadian athletes $1,750 a month, which is effectively nothing.
$1,700. All right.
So you cannot live off of that. And so she was renting this property out.
You cannot.
She now has a tenant that is in arrears and hasn't paid. And so she's trying to work with the tenancy board to get this sorted out and fixed. But it's taking so long. She is now having to take on a job that she works 40 hours a week at. And she's saying, the more hours I work, the less that I'm able to train, the more practices that I miss.
Yeah, of course.
And realistically, it's impacting my ability to attend the Olympics in the future. So this is...
Okay, what has the online feedback been like for our dear Olympian?
I'm quoting all this from a CBC article. I didn't see the online feedback yet. I'll see if they have a comment section right now.
Because here's the thing. Like, she might be unpleasantly surprised when she realized it does not matter what your past accolades are. She could be an Olympian who also saved a small village from a flood. As soon as she signs on a dotted line and becomes a landlord, all that goes away. You are public enemy number one. So there are going to be people on there being like, oh, this poor entitled Olympian has to work a real job because some poor tenant won't pay for her livelihood. I just know she's going to get dragged for this.
Honestly, and this is because she's an Olympian, and I'm kind of like, this is going to be a good person to speak up because she's going to get mostly positive feedback, which I'm looking through here. I found one bad one. The guys who commented, his name was...
What is it, Neal? Share it with the class.
It's Dick Shivers.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, Dick Shivers. Obviously, he's going to have something really valuable to contribute to this conversation.
He's the first bad one I found, and he was the automatically defaming the tenants as bad, whereas the story is why they didn't pay. More liberal media BS.
Wait, he thinks that is a liberal thing that supports the landlord?
He then also replied by saying, oh, one sec.
Richard Shivers really needs to get his argument clear here. Why would the liberal media sign with...
and then someone followed to reply to him and say, they probably didn't pay because they know they are protected. Not the first story of this kind. There are many, many out there. Dick proceeded to respond again and say, probably is not a fact, so your point is not valid. He's a very short and quick...
Dick Shivers is short and to the point. Okay. Well, again, I'll be interested to see how that one plays out in the court of public opinion. Because, maybe this is what we need to do. Maybe you and I should go in the 2-man luge, get ourselves to the next Winter Olympic Games, and then all of a sudden we won't get dragged as much for being landlords.
How are all these comments? Like, the next one is Clint Westwood. Like,
I think these are fake names, but...
I'm starting to wonder the legitimacy of this website.
No, that's going to be an interesting one, as I said, because when you do become a landlord, you lose sympathy. But
here's my only thing. I will say I think it's good that she spoke up because
Totally.
unfortunately, no one listens to us. And no one's going to listen to anyone unless they've done something that's by masses considered to be a good thing, whether it be saving 1 million children or going and competing for your country. And these people, when they speak up, it honestly tends to sway another body behind them, because all of her supporters are like, wow, this is insanity. And now
here's someone I know, here's someone I've seen that's going through this, and it's like having a negative impact on life. Because I can tell you, anyone who's 1 degree removed from someone who's going through one of these situations sees it and realizes the challenges that person's going through, because someone is stealing money from them effectively month to month. But it's hard when you don't have that platform and people feel arm's length to you. They don't necessarily sympathize as much as they would. But I can't believe you just ignored my comment that we should enter the 2-man luge at the next Winter Games.
I didn't even hear that. I was too busy reading all these comments. We
I don't know if I want to be the top or the bottom of the luge in this situation. Anyone with good
luge experience,
Adobe Photoshop skills, go ahead and make that up and send it to me. Well, that's interesting. That's your big piece of news, eh?
I think that was a big piece of news because, again, it just what's happening to her. I think what's happening to her is happening to a ton of other people, similar to what Clint Westwood said. But I do think that it's good that someone who's in that place commented out. So it's
also this is the thing with all of this stuff too. I mean, that's presumably a relatively young individual. Most people aren't in the Olympics past their 30s anyway. And I felt the same way about the Airbnb situation. A lot of people renting properties on a small scale, one-offs, if you will, or running short-term rentals, they're predominantly young people trying to make their way, trying to get a little bit of extra cash to do something like pursue a dream or pursue a passion, or even just pay off debt, or just to try to get a foothold in this market that is getting away from us a little bit. And it's hard work. So the people that take this on, they're assuming risk, they're assuming debt, they're assuming extra workload. It is not passive, it is active, it is hard work, and they're not becoming rich off it. They are just trying to grow some measure of net worth. And for these regulatory bodies and for the government and just to crack down on these young industrious people, I think makes no sense. It's counterintuitive to like what we want to encourage our citizens to do, which is to be ambitious, to be entrepreneurial, to start companies and to do all these things. But no, we're just cutting them off at the knees time and time again, whether it's this, whether it's Airbnb regulations, whatever it is.
They want?
I don't know. Like what's your
do
your
they
stroking?
Want to encourage?
Well, we should. We keep saying that small
capitalistic
businesses and industrial, human capital, young people, and people of all ages being in.
We need to increase our
ambitious.
productivity as a whole.
Yeah. But we disincentivize, we discourage people actively from doing these things. And then what are resources? Like, okay, so if you don't want us to make any sort of net worth on real estate, if you won't let us supplement our incomes with cash flow from rental properties to pay off all these debts, literally, what are we supposed to do? Mm-hmm. Honestly, like, I don't know, because you're highly discouraged from starting companies and starting businesses in this country enough as it is. What I don't know the alternative. Like, we're just all supposed to be the equal amount of poor and live in this socialist dystopia, but whatever. I feel like we've been digressing.
I think we've digressed a little bit, but I agree with what you're saying, and I think that's a common trait that most of our common opinion. I guess I think a lot of our listeners would agree with. If they don't, would love to hear you tell us why you don't, or come on and chat with us so we can talk about it.
Yeah.
But I think we want to get into today's topic and what we want to go over today.
Yeah, so we're going to talk today about the question about how much to take on yourself, like the DIY approach versus outsourcing to contractors. And I know a lot of people that listen to this show.
When to make the jump.
Yeah, when to make that jump. A lot of people have asked about that, and a lot of people are out there literally swinging the hammer themselves. And we've both done that to some degree. I'd be curious to hear your look on it. It's something I certainly did starting off, and there were reasons for it. And then I often look back and go, well, the reason was money. And the reason was the opportunity cost of my time. So if I was in this situation now, what would I do? And I feel different ways about it, so we can kind of talk through it. But it even extends to the idea of property management, which I know we've covered a little bit, and I know we've got a special episode specifically devoted to that on our Patreon. Because property management is another thing we get asked about so much, and we have different approaches to that. You've got someone now, I still do it myself and kind of piecemeal, but I do believe there's value in doing it yourself because of the learning. So we're going to talk about that. But I did want to cover a couple other little things in the interim. And it comes back again to the Airbnb stuff because that's making headlines here. If you haven't seen it, the province of Nova Scotia is effectively cracking down on the Airbnb industry. Again, not banning it, but making it so cumbersome and discouraging it so strongly that they'll effectively probably push a lot of people out of it. Simply put, they're going to require you to register with the province, which seems fine enough in its own. But of course, then once you register, you have to prove that you are conforming to the municipal bylaws of your area. And since you're running a short-term rental, they're going to deem that as commercial. So if you have a short-term rental in an area that's residential and not commercial, they can shut you down and they can fine you. And they will not let your property be on sites like Vrbo or Airbnb if you're not in the registry. So you can kind of see how this thing could snowball and get to the point where, as a homeowner who's been trying to run these short-term rentals, you at some point maybe throw in the towel and say, well, this just isn't worth the obstacle, and it's going to be a challenge. So by contrast to that, the U.S. has, in the U.S., Airbnb has partnered with a number of larger kind of corporate landlords, and they have rolled out these programs. I think they've got about 70 buildings so far. And again, these are major landlords who had a few buildings, but they're partnering with the landlord to allow tenants to short-term rent their units with a kickback going to the landlord. So this is this really interesting scenario, and the landlord can set all of the rules. So the landlord can set how many days a month they can do it.
Sorry, so the government's regulating it?
No. Sorry, this is Airbnb expanding a new tool that they have down in the States.
Okay.
So in a lot of cases, landlords will not allow their tenants to put the units on Airbnb. They effectively won't allow them to triage out the units. And triaging is a pretty, it's another hustle out there that's gained some attention, but it's a hard thing to do, and a lot of landlords don't like it because landlords...
this is a service for the tenants that allows them to lease it out based on rules set in place by the landlord.
Exactly. And Airbnb has specifically partnered with a couple big landlords that own a number of buildings in major centers to roll out this kind of test drive of this program.
So super clever on Airbnb's part, because a lot of people try to do that, and a lot of big buildings offer a lot of the perks and amenities that people want to use. And I see a few of the big Airbnb companies here, they have partnerships with major landlords that own large multi-unit buildings to do that within their buildings, but the average person can't do it. They usually have to rent homes or own the property or lease from small time people that they can kind of sneak it in or get away with it. So that's an interesting concept.
But here's the other thing,
it's going to take so much heat. Like, the governments are going to hate it.
Well, the governments may hate it, but a lot of municipalities are more open to Airbnb than others. But I think this is also a way of Airbnb saying, okay, what happens if we get squeezed out of all of the micro, one-off, mom-and-pop Airbnb units?
It's great for Airbnb.
How do we keep our model going?
Smart.
Well, all of a sudden, they just picked up 70 buildings across major centers in the U.S., and what they're going to do is, say I own a building, say it's 20 units in there, and I say, okay, every tenant in this building is allowed to Airbnb their unit out. However, they're only allowed to do it, say, 120 days of the year, and they're not allowed pets, they're not allowed this, whatever. But in exchange for that, the landlord gets a cut of it. And I think it's about 20%. So Airbnb takes their cut, the landlord takes their cut, the tenant gets the rest. Well, the advantages to the tenant are obvious. This could help offset your rent. It could make your situation more tenable if you want to travel. You could rent your unit while you're away. The benefit to the landlord is that you get this cash, and in fact, you might be able to charge more for the unit as well. So your actual lease is higher, and you get this extra flow of income. And then Airbnb gets all this new inventory, this new stock. What occurred to me was there are so many condos out there that strictly forbid having Airbnbs. if I were someone buying a condo as an investor,
To pause for a quick second, for anyone listening, like an apartment building is owned by one singular company or like a main holding thing, and they all share the same rules. But the rules are determined and prescribed by that singular owner, whereas a condo building is an apartment building that's split into a bunch of units. And then as a whole, all of those owners will make the rules. So in this case, where there's 70 apartments, one owner can be like, yes, I will sign up with Airbnb. A condo building, if there's 70 owners for all the separate units, then all 70 need to say yes, or at least a certain percentage, 60% or 70% that are on that board need to agree with it, which makes it very, very difficult to get it when people are owners and they all individually pay and they're watching they're trying to protect the value of their condo.
Yeah.
So on average, most condo buildings have banned or outlawed.
Almost all,
all, like 90% probably plus have banned and outlawed Airbnbs. So continue, just so people know what you're saying.
So this is my question is, as a tenant, would you be more interested in renting a building that you knew you could Airbnb? And then as an investor, like, could you see this actually raising the value, especially on, say, new construction condos, if the condos were marketed as Airbnb friendly? Like, hey, you can buy this condo unit and then Airbnb the crap out of it. Or as a tenant, like, hey, you can rent this. And honestly, like, and I knew this is what was going on in New York when Airbnb first started. People would essentially sleep 2 nights a week at their friend's house, Airbnb their unit, and pay their entire month of rent. So you can understand the appeal as a tenant to rent in a building where you would be able to Airbnb your unit.
Well, I'll speak to this a little bit. Shout out to my girlfriend. Can't say what building she lives in. But she has an apartment right now, and most of you guys know I like to travel, so we travel a lot.
Yeah.
And when we're gone, she has Airbnb'd her unit multiple times now. She has it down to kind of a system. It's not great, but basically she garbage bags all of her personal items.
Yeah.
And we ship them over to my place. And while we're gone, if we're gone for 5 days, she'll post it on Airbnb. Usually just have a friend do the handoff. But she's been able to make like
the cost of the trip,
$800, like a big portion of the trip, or half of her month of rent. It's just nothing to sneeze at. And realistically, we weren't here anyway, so the unit was going to sit empty. So it's been a huge win for her to do that. And actually, the building that I'm in is also supposed to have that system where they offer that service through the building. The building management has a system where they can run your unit while you're gone. It's a 60-40 split. I keep 60, they take 40. But they also can rent their unit, or rent my unit for me while I'm away, assuming everything's in place. It works really well in my building because there's also a hotel in the building, so they share the services. So like the cleaners and the hotel management would actually run my unit, but that's also a system that you're seeing that in the building that I'm in now as well.
Would you, as a landlord, how would you feel about this?
As a landlord, I like the idea because I think honestly it would result in a higher income from the building.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a couple things that I have as concerns right off the hop is if anyone's living there long term and I'm having Airbnbers come through that are potentially here for a party weekend.
A good time, not a long time.
A good time, not a long time. Just there's a lot of other stuff. There's a lot of mess that comes in and out.
Yeah.
Instead of people just coming home from work with a briefcase or a backpack or whatever, there's people trudging through with suitcases. And I know when I'm going through a hotel with a suitcase, I'm not opposed to bumping into a few walls here and there or making a ton of noise when I'm with my friends going down the hall. The other thing is it's amazing, but the second this starts to catch on, I don't think it's going to be people that are singular users. It's similar to Airbnb. The people who make money aren't the singular users. It's on average, I think it's people who set up and have companies doing a lot of them.
But I think,
what I was going to say though is I see banks pulling back on this, and I've already seen it here where I have clients that have very well located properties, and when they end up going and doing these leases with these Airbnb management companies, even if the Airbnb management company provides a guarantee and they're just signing residential leases, the second the bank finds out that there's short-term rentals, and they're writing this into their mortgages now, the second that they see that there's short-term rentals in the building, the financing terms change, or they're not, like they want to change the mortgage, or they have to reduce the loan to value, especially now coming out of COVID.
But here's the workaround. In the case of these buildings, the units are all on fixed-term leases.
Individually with separate people.
Yeah, so every individual tenant has their own lease. It just happens that they as a tenant are allowed to short-term rent
every weekend and
yeah, and if they're going to do it, they have to do it through the Airbnb platform, and their building is registered so that the owner of the building is also going to get a cut. So
I think it's super clever for Airbnb.
And again, I wonder because, we're going to do an episode here. I think it's our next episode where we talk about the trends. Maybe it's 2 episodes from now, the trends that we're expecting next year. And I have a lot of questions. I don't know where Airbnb is going to trend because I don't think our municipality happens to be the only one in North America that's going to crack down on this. I don't think it's the case. So them shifting towards, the experience Airbnb model, like the DJ Khaled thing that we talked about, or stuff like this where it's more corporatized. It becomes, almost like a hotel booking website with these big landlords. I can see them trying to continue to keep their growth in these new creative ways.
Yeah, no, I think that's really smart from Airbnb. I agree. I don't know what's going to boil out of it. Like, I think it makes a lot of sense, and you'll see a lot of people doing it. Is it going to result in higher base rents for people? Because it's like, well, my building's located in a great area. I already know. And then I honestly believe it'll be individuals who will make good money on this, and they'll be like, oh, frig yeah, I'll lease 10 units.
Yeah, I guess I'll pay the extra $500 a month because I know I'm going to bring in an extra $1,500.
Exactly. And then so people will slowly, every time someone leaves a unit, they're renting a 1-bedroom $1,500.
Right.
The second they leave, the landlord already knows that Chandler's down next door doing $2,500 a month out of it, and he'll sign it instantly. So why would I even take it to market? Or like, you know what I mean? Or I'm only going to kind of bring it around to Airbnb operators. Yeah. So I think it's going to be really good for Airbnb. I think it's going to be really good for building owners. I see some difficulties on the side with banks, and I also see some difficulty for the average tenant. I think it'll be really good for people who are locked into a unit, protected by rent control, and have the ability to make that money. Because if you're in a building that's not protected by rent control and you're in a location where people around you are all making thousands of dollars a month from the Airbnbs, your unit's going to become very expensive very quickly.
Yeah, I hear you.
Wow.
Anyway, I just thought that was interesting because
is super cool.
There's so much conversation around Airbnbs and it just kind of lined up a little bit with
I wonder if they'll try and set something up like that with condo boards where it pays into the condo association.
Oh my gosh, I think it'd be a no-brainer. I honestly, if I were developing in a condo, I don't think you can do this en masse because you're essentially signing up condos to be a pseudo short-term rental hotel. However, if I had a small marketable condo and the market wasn't yet saturated with this idea, I would 100% do a project where it's like, listen, this is the price of the condo, but we're marketing this whole building as you are allowed to Airbnb it. And I think you could get enough people in a major center, like say there's 60 units there. Could you get 60 people who are like, hell yeah, that sounds like an amazing idea. I travel 3 months of the year, or like I'm just an always on the go person. I want to buy that unit, provided it's like, hey guys, the most you can do is 90 days a year.
If it catches on, it's going to lead into like this whole industry of like lockable. I think they probably already have it, but like lockable furniture and stuff. So like you can have a lockable wardrobe. So when you're there, you just have all your clothes and stuff. When you leave, you just lock the wardrobe and leave. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it makes sense.
But yeah, that would make sense too for people who travel and stuff. There's already, I'm seeing too now, there's a lot of these economies where if you're what's considered a permanent work from home person, they offer lease packages for 12 months where, you do 3 months in Toronto, 3 months in Vancouver.
Oh, sweet.
And so you can like travel around, chase the seasons, and enjoy all these different kind of places. So I saw that was super neat. But yeah, that would be awesome. It to be like, I want to live and have my home base in Toronto. So I buy the condo in this condo building. They allow me to Airbnb it. I do have to give 25% of it into the condo board to help give the extra maintenance to handle the amenities that we have. But I still end up netting more money than I was by not being able to be here 100%. And doing these. The other thing is you're concerned when you're like, oh, I'm doing a short-term lease while I'm gone, and then you get back and you can't kick them out. Versus an Airbnb, on average, it's a little easier to.
Yeah, and even if it's 90 days, but in a big market, you could probably conservatively get $200 like net profit a night conservatively.
Yeah,
that's not a small amount of money.
But
but it's only 90 days, so you only count days. If you hit 100% occupancy.
Yeah, it hit 70 days in there, making $200 a night. It's $14,000. It's over $1,000 a month that you subsidize your.
Yeah, and you would always hit your 100% because it's not like you'll just continue to market it until you hit your 90-day quota and then you get cut off.
Right? Oh yeah. I mean, but like if you're gone for 3 months or something, then you have to do it within a certain period. But still, I think it could be an amazing thing, and I think it's smart from Airbnb to start implementing that because these are all the rules that are getting in the way of them having any more growth. And I think they're seeing, like you said, the writing on the wall where there's such a housing shortage. They're going to be cut out of so many single family properties and these more, I I guess,
Micro operations,
and miniature buildings.
Yeah. Anyway, I just thought it was super interesting.
Hey guys, thanks for listening up until this point. Coming up, Chandler and I debate whether you should be doing everything yourself or you should be hiring it out. Again, him and I have a little bit of a differing opinion, so you're going to want to check it out. I think it's going to help you guys make the decision for yourselves.
Total lane switch. Before we get into our main topic, like today we're going to talk a little bit about DIY and how much you should be doing yourself if you're starting out. Some things that we learned through our process, what we would do again, how we would do it different,
I hate painting.
What's that?
I hate painting.
Oh yeah, painting's the worst. But, I'm going to throw a couple things at you because Remax just released their national forecast for next year.
Okay.
And they kind of went market by market to see what was going to be up in their mind and what was going to be down. There's a big expectation that the volume of transactions is going to go back up next year. But across the board, the average sale price is going to be down a little bit, but skewed dramatically by major markets, Toronto and Vancouver. And we're very fortunate here. They're actually expecting Halifax to go up 8%, and Alberta is expected to do really well also. But they also had some really general ideas I want to throw at you and just get your kind of quick one-line take based on these surveys that they did. They found that 60% of Canadians currently own their home.
That's actually, I think, impressive.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by that myself.
I thought there was more renters.
Yes, did I.
So yeah, that's a good stat to hear.
45% of Canadians worry that further interest rate increases will impact their ability to buy or sell a home next year.
Yeah, I mean that's. I think that number should be higher. Honestly, I think 45% of people are being realistic. I think the other 55 are being a little too optimistic. And impact doesn't mean you won't be able to sell or you won't be able to buy. It just means you're going to have less buying power and or you might sell for a bit less. I think, like we said, volume overall will still continue to stay high.
Yeah, I'd be curious what the breakdown of that is by sellers versus buyers, because normally the only people we hear talking about rates are buyers. But in this particular instance, this last little while, sellers have been talking about...
Oh shit, that's impacting the value of my house because nobody's got any money.
It's like, wait a second, they have to have real money? Not just imaginary bank money. No, a lot of sellers are very in tune with that, and I think probably a good deal of that sentiment of that 45% would be on the selling side. 73% of Canadians believe home ownership is the best long-term investment they can make, and what's crazy about that is that's up from 49% in 2021.
Oh, that's no surprise because everybody in the last year has been like, oh, I know a friend who made $100,000 on a house. I know a friend who made $200,000 on a house. And so everyone's like, well, this has got to be the best investment of all time.
Right.
We should do an episode on that, but I don't think necessarily owning your own home is the best way of doing it. I think it's a great way of doing it, but it's definitely not the best or the only way. But it's up there. I would say it is up there because it's a more passive thing and it's something you get to use while you invest.
What about this one? 54% of Canadians are confident that their finances will be stable in 2023, and this number is higher among homeowners at 49%, and those with a higher income, 63%. So basically, more wealthy people that own homes feel a little bit more confident, but still not very high confidence level. 63% is the highest number in there, and that's people who own their homes and have good incomes. Only 63% of them are confident. Well,
I'm in the 46%. That is not feeling super confident about how things are going.
How many things do you have under offer right now?
3, and they're all bigger. I think there's just the 3 of them together is bigger than my entire portfolio. So
this guy, you're
double up.
Model of,
but no. I do feel comfortable that I'll get through it. Do I think it's going to be hard? Yes. Do I think I need to change how I'm going to live? Yes. And I think most people, if you're not thinking that, you're not being realistic. I'm around both high net worth and average net worth individuals consistently, and I would say both parties express that there is an extreme change in the cost of living.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, unless you're making big money, there should be no reason for you to not have to change. And when I say big money, I mean you need to be making at least $500,000 a year or more before you can almost try and pretend like you're immune to what's going on. Like it just, or you're making $200,000, but you have absolutely no debt and no obligations. Like that's. So if you're under that,
or you're living in a van with Neal down by the river.
Well, that's still $9.99 a month.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in all seriousness, I think that number is too low. I think people need to really be. I think that's what scares me on average. Is people are just like when I say I go to the grocery store and everyone's just like, and I'm like, Your grocery bill is one of my good friends called me. I'll just say shout out Max called me about 2 weeks ago. He said when they checked out of Costco, it was like $800, and he's like,
Oh man, it's psycho.
it used to be 400, which was
Yeah.
insane, and now he's like, now it's like 800, and we didn't go any harder than we usually do.
I actually just discovered this new app where like someone will go and pick up your groceries for you.
Yeah.
And bring back. I did not know about that. I'm sure everyone here knew about that app except for me, because I hate going to the grocery store.
Instacart.
Yeah, Instacart. Or let's not give them a free plug, but yeah, I didn't know about this.
You shouldn't say that on your channel. You're not helping your cause.
Why? What do you mean?
No, I'm just messing with you.
No, like it's so convenient. But it still is like, man, I barely got any groceries. And then I had to pay the courier fee. And then I tipped the guy because he was literally there. He was like, hey, man, they're out of these. Like texting me the whole time.
No.
Like, I don't know, replace it. He was going through.
I'll call it Instacart. We're not giving them a free plug here. If you guys use it, I know it feels very convenient and it's great. First order of business, you don't pick any of your produce or any of the products, and they screw it up consistently. Second order of business.
This guy did a pretty good job.
Second order of business.
He sent paper towel instead
they
of
mark
toilet
up
paper,
half
but
the
other
shit that's on there. So that's
Really?
oh yeah, they have little
How's
like
that possible?
they have
Are they allowed to do that?
yeah, they have little markups and everything. Like the prices are not quite the same.
Okay.
Additionally, they also then charge you a fee to be a part of it, and then you end up tipping the delivery driver. So again, you best be making some serious bank if you have to use Instacart or have a serious reason to not be at the store.
How much would I have to pay you to go get my groceries right now?
I don't know, $3,500.
So Instacart's still undercutting Neal. You know what I mean?
Well, but here, my point exactly though is that you need to be making a lot of money to afford Instacart. I don't like again what we've just talked about where everyone needs to be saving money. We talked about cutting out all your subscriptions and all those things. Chandler's Uber Eats
Going
bill.
the opposite direction.
But no, like that's where I'm like Instacart is very expensive. Much cheaper option I think is you go directly to the store and you do pick up on site, and I don't think they charge for that right now.
That as well. Yeah.
And you just pull up and you can pick up your stuff.
Yeah.
That I'm more on board for. Instacart's great, but goddamn, you best be balling.
Well, but to your point, like I was so excited. I'm like, man, this is so easy. Blah blah blah. And then I go to checkout and it was like $172, and I got like the bare minimum. I got some ground beef. I got some granola bars for the kids' lunches. I tried to get some toilet paper, but he brought me paper towels. So it wasn't perfect execution.
See?
It wasn't
You're
perfect.
literally explaining everything.
I got some apples and, got some basic stuff. I'm like, damn, man, with like the tip and stuff like this was $200.
So, sorry, you got toilet paper or paper towel?
Just the paper towel.
Okay, so you've been wiping your ass with paper towel now? I hope you drop some
All
lip
right,
chap
so we're
off
going to get
too.
into our other topic. I don't want to take this conversation any further. Let's just say on my next order, I'm going to have to add some more face cloths to the shopping cart. No, just kidding. That's terrible. No, I ended up having to drive to a store anyway and pick up toilet paper as a result.
Shout out Instacart.
Yeah. So anyway, but to your point, like, I was like, oh man, this is great. This is so convenient, blah, blah. And you get to the bill and you're like, damn, man, like this is a week's worth of food.
Bro, it's like Uber
Not
Eats.
even.
You're going to Uber Eats and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get lunch. Okay, cool. $14 salad. I'm like, meh, whatever. Put it in there, add chicken, $4. Okay, $18 salad. Then you go to checkout and it's like, oh, because you have Uber One, you're saving all this money. But it went from $18 salad to $31 with tip. And I'm like,
yeah.
how the hell did I just spend $30
Well,
on
there is
what's
a lettuce
considered
shortage.
and then I have the Uber membership and it's still that much money. And I'm like, but all of it's the extra. They're like, oh, you save the delivery fee. But then if everyone looks where it says taxes, it says taxes and fees. Do the math. It's never anywhere close to your taxes. Like the $20 thing, taxes here should be $3. Well, taxes and fees are $7.
Yeah.
You're like, well, that doesn't make much sense.
Yeah.
The
math
anyways,
doesn't
we've
math.
digressed.
Yeah. So, but this is interesting because this transitions well into this idea of what you can save if you do it yourself. If
Exactly.
you go to the grocery store yourself.
Make your own salad.
Tell me your first DIY project, like the actual, this is a property Neal owns
Yep.
that he went in there and he swung a hammer.
So
Has it
this
ever happened? Like,
I don't think I've
can you
ever
picture
swung
it
a hammer.
people out there? You've never swung a hammer. How soft are those hands over there? Those hands are silky soft. Let me see. Oh, there's a couple
there's
calluses there.
a little bump there.
Oh, okay. That's from the
working out,
elliptical machine
Yeah.
at the gym, I'm sure. Who am I to talk?
Anyways, moving on to my first property that I actually did work on. So my first one was not my first one that I did work on because the first one was simply a rental.
Yeah.
But my first flip property that I bought with the intention to go in there, gut, renovate, and resell was a foreclosure. I purchased it at the auction for $100,000.
Oh, an actual live auction?
Yes,
Okay,
I had
we
never
have
been
to
in the
tell us about that one
property. I
time,
had
too.
nothing to do. So this was, I think I mentioned it before in our full story breakdown near the start of us doing this podcast. But yeah, I went to a foreclosure auction. I was the only person there. It was the judge, the bank, and myself. It's not actually a judge, it's like a lawyer that handles it. So it's the lawyer, the bank's lawyer, and myself. The bank literally only bid to their number. Most times, I've gone to every single property in advance. I will drive over there, even though you cannot access the property. I would walk around,
you'd look
peek in the
around.
windows, do all my due
Talk to a
diligence,
neighbor.
make sure it was decent, talk to the neighbor, and then go bid. In this case, I didn't have time to do that. And it was the first time ever that I didn't have time, but I ran over to the auction house, went inside, and again, I was the only person there, lawyer, bank's lawyer, myself. And I went in there. I didn't have any money because usually you need to place a 10% deposit before you
deposit, yeah.
leave. I didn't even bring any money because I didn't really have intent. And so
Impulse
they
buy.
opened the bid and he goes, based on the outstanding amount owing, blah, 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 it's $2,700. Anyone like to bid $2,700? And the bank goes, yeah, $2,700, obviously, because they're going to buy their property back.
$2,700?
Yeah, but now again, you the bank's sitting there, so you're not going to get this for $3,000. So then I'll bid $5,000, which is maybe I shouldn't have raised the roof so high.
It's like, sir, we go in $5 increments here.
So I said 5, and then the bank said 10, and then I think I might have said 15, and they said 20, and then I might have said like 50 or something, and the bank said 75.
Oh, wow, you boys really got serious in a hurry.
Yeah, it's fun for anyone who's
that's dangerously fun.
It's insane. And like I was heart racing at this point for a $75,000 house. Anyways, bid, and then they started to slow down around 90. Like I think I said like 90, and they were like, instead of going up by 5, they were like 92, and I was like,
cracking the armor.
This is the this is the
92,
spot.
500.
And so then, we started going up by smaller increments, and I think they did 97.5, and I said 100. And then, like, I kind of just gotten used to him, just like the bank going 102, and I just kind of, then it was kind of keeping me calm. But then when I said 100, the banker just kind of like started like packing up his bag, and I was like,
And like, wait, I didn't mean it.
yeah, I was like, oh shit, like it was, and then the lawyer's like, all right, I guess it's yours, and he like pointed at me. And I was like, okay, well,
I didn't bring my wallet.
yeah, first order of business, I have no money.
Can I e-transfer you?
Yeah, and he was just like, and I'm like, literally, my bank was across the street. I could see it out of the window, and I was like, look, my bank is right there. Can I run across the street, get the deposit,
like, who is this guy?
and run back and give it to you? And that's like
you just leave and don't come back. That was so good.
That was like a strict no. Like that's a hard no from most of them. This guy was the nicest guy ever, and he said, you have like 3 minutes. And I literally just am like sprinting through the courtroom.
God, that would never happen now because you can't even get to the teller inside of 20 minutes these days. But
Literally. And so then I'm like running across the street, getting to the bank. I'm like anxiously waiting in line, get the money, come back, hand him the money, gives me a receipt, and I had no idea when I was going to get the keys to the house. I think they gave me a phone number or something. Anyways, start going through that process. Come to find out, I tried to get a mortgage on the house. Bank won't do it because I can't get into the home, and I have no income. So
What?
I end up having to fundraise the capital to close.
I mean, you did not tell this story before, by the way.
Okay, so I end up fundraising the capital to close.
Fundraising the capital. Okay.
It's a small amount. I use the term fundraise capital, but realistically, I pool together the money to close. And so I show up, give them the next amount of money. You have to do it within 14 days. So 14 days later, I show up at the courthouse, give them the remainder of the money. Then they give me a contact number for a property manager. And then they have to wait till the deed transfers and all that, which they don't do in a hurry. And maybe 50 days, 60 days later, that
Jesus.
long, I finally get access to get the keys. And so I met with someone, they gave me the keys, and then we drive over there, again, not knowing anything about the house. And I'm like, okay, fingers crossed, we walk in this house and it's perfect, and I can just put a friggin' for sale sign in the front driveway, and off we go. Turn the door, go to like push the door open.
The door falls over.
Yeah, basically. Turn the lock, push the door, and it opens maybe like 3 feet, like most of the rotation. And it's a split entry, and there's just stuff all the way up to like the ceiling going down the staircase, and then stuff all the way up all the steps, and then the entire upstairs, like it's open. It's like one of those open split entries where it's like the railings around.
Yeah.
There's just stuff piled probably about 3.5 feet high.
How did it compare to the hoarding situation I just sent you the other day?
I'd say it looked cleaner because what was hoarded was actual like people's stuff.
Yeah.
Come to find out it wasn't cleaner. Chandler had sent one that was pretty dirty recently, but this was just a ton of like kids' toys, family stuff, which is it's sad.
Yeah.
Anyways, I was like, all right, here we go. And of course it smelled like animal piss and manure. And it was like, all right, this is going to be a project. And like I basically trudged around over a lot of the stuff to try and take a look and see what things look like. The kitchen was just like nasty, so I couldn't quite tell. Bathroom was pretty nasty and needed to be done. It was 2 bathrooms. So upstairs there was a kitchen.
Where was this?
Living room, dining room, Harrietsfield.
Okay.
Which is
Random
also
buy,
a
dude.
neighborhood which was going through a bunch of stuff because they have water quality issues, and all the
Big water
homes are
quality.
on well, which I didn't know when I made the bid until I drove out there to go look at the house.
Do they
and every telephone pole has get our kids clean water. Where's our water? As I'm driving out, and it's in like that red spray paint where it's like dripping down, and I'm like, oh god, like this is a scene.
Neal's like, if it's brown, drink it down.
Yeah. So, anyways, the neighboring houses were nice, and the thing that gave me confidence is on either side of the main road, there were subdivisions with a few new homes in there that were going at the time for like $450, which when I bought that $450 for a house in Halifax was a lot.
Yeah.
But these are brand new, like.
All right, so get to the work. Did you clean out the junk?
So then I was like, again, I had no money and I had to make this thing work, and I was hoping to simply get this turned over and relisted and sold for like $170 or $180, which was obviously not going to happen. So I did the work. So this is when I had no experience, no knowledge of anything. First thing I did was I ordered a bin to the house. So I called, I'm not even going to say who it was, but I called a bin company, and that was my first mistake right off the hop. I just called a few, one of them gave me the cheapest price, but I didn't realize that bins could have timelines on them. So the bin company came and dropped it off, and like I was kind of avoiding going to this house because there was so much stuff to empty. And then after maybe 3 days, I get a call from the bin company, and they're like, hey, you ready for us to come pick it up? And I was like, no.
Like,
and
I'm gonna just wait till I fill it first.
Yeah, I'm like, maybe before I gotta put some stuff in. They're like, oh yeah, well your bin rental ends in 2 days, and then it's another like $300 to keep the bin. And I'm like, what? And so literally that weekend I took off, and I probably went there first thing in the morning at 8, and I spent 12 to 14 hours there, filled the brim to the top to the point where I was stepping on it and I was jumping on it to push all the stuff down. And that hadn't even emptied maybe half the house. When the truck came to like load it, it was like trying to like lift it up, and it was like the truck almost like broke down.
Just you solo throwing the stuff in there? Or you
Me
have boys?
solo all day. I took all the garbage. I went and bought
Jesus.
gloves, and I was throwing it out. Come to find out, everything's covered in cat piss and shit because cats have been running all over through all the stuff.
At least you have gloves.
So I had the gloves, but every time you lift something up and half of it ends up on you.
Oh my god! I wish I saw
doing that. Empty it into the bin, get the first bin taken away, another bin brought back, which I was not expecting. Load that whole thing up, and as I'm loading that one up, the family actually pulled up. They used to live in the house, which was horrible. And they asked, like, "Oh my god, like, can we get in there?" And the little kids came running out, asking if they can come in and get their stuff. And I was like, "Oh shit!" Like, this was like literally as I threw like the last piece of garbage onto the bin. I was like, "You kidding me? I just spent the last like 40 hours emptying garbage of this house. Now there's nothing left in here." The only thing I did do is I had taken one of the Tupperware container, like the big Tupperwares, and I had filled it with all their pictures, any of the family photos they had. So I had like 30 family photos like in frames for them, and they took that and they were super thankful, and like they understood that it wasn't me who pushed them out of their home. Like the bank had taken their home and I bought it from the bank effectively, even though I didn't, it's not a direct translation like that, but that's effectively what took place. But anyways, that was pretty disheartening to watch as the kids kind of like roam through the home trying to find their stuff. Anyway, so I did all that clean out myself. And then as I got further into it, like I tried to salvage a lot of stuff. I just basically went on our local classifieds, which is Kijiji, and called flooring guys, plumbers, the whole shebang. And my friends did help me with some stuff, moving the appliances. Shout out Ian if you still listen to this. He literally lifted all the appliances basically on his own, and he was going down the staircase, and the whole fridge was still full of food, but it must have been sitting there with no power for
Gross.
4 or 5 months. So when you opened it, it was an entire ecosystem. Like they could have filmed Avatar in there. If you did like hyper zoom, it looked like it's like there's people flying around and stuff, and there's like green arms going across. Anyways, we like taped it up like 50 times. I was like, I can't clean this fridge.
Yeah.
I called Efficiency Nova Scotia and I was like, you guys give $50 for old fridges?
I'm gonna need that $50.
So we go to like bring it down the staircase and Ian's on the bottom. The door like cracked open and you just hear all the stuff like fall, shatter, and just like the black liquid just streams out and pours down his arm. Anyways, he was a trooper. We got them all to the side of the road. Obviously, they went missing in about 2 seconds. There was a camper in the front yard that I sold for money. There was a canoe in the backyard that I sold for money. And then a bunch of other miscellaneous things that I ended up selling in Kijiji. Anything I could salvage, I was keeping and selling in Kijiji by being there all the time. Anyways, so we get all the garbage out. Then I start kind of doing an inventory of what I need to do. And like I said, I went on the classifieds and just started calling people. I had no contacts and I didn't have anyone who really did this business. And so I was just bringing a bunch of people out. And effectively, I was calling the cheapest people I could find. Like there was ads like, we install flooring, 99 cents. We install cabinets, $10. Like at that time, people weren't as in demand.
Different time.
You could actually to this day, I still have some of those contractors that do work with us.
Yeah.
Anyways, so they all came out and we started going through it. The kitchen was like missing cabinet doors. The ones around the oven were all melted, and a few other things. I actually took one of the cabinet doors off and I went to a hardware supplier here and found the same profile of cabinet door.
Yeah.
And instead of redoing the kitchen, I just reordered 4 cabinet doors for like $75.
Yeah.
And screwed them on. So I did that. I went and screwed those on. Like I said, and then I ended up looking at the floor and I tried to salvage it, and then we slowly started pulling it back and it all had to go. So I tore all the floor out. My buddies helped me with that. So I got another bin and tore all that stuff out. Same with all the trim, pulled all the trim off. Then materials, same thing. During this whole time, I just knew what I needed. I would shop the flyers like a freak and just watch like, oh, Kent's got clearance on tiles and I need 20 square feet of it. And it's literally 99 cents a tile. I would go and pick it up.
So
flooring, same
did you
thing.
install any of the flooring?
I didn't install any of the flooring myself because I knew that I would just mess it up and I'd be beaten around. So like I said, I went and found the cheapest guy to do it there. Even the painting I started, and then I hired someone else to do it. But I did it basically the demo and the cleanup. But I realized at that time I was just starting my career. Actually, no, I was still in school. So I was trying to finish school and then start my career during that time. The value to pay someone to do it was so important to me.
Well, this is the thing. So if you're looking at that in hindsight,
Anyways, I'll finish really quick before you.
Yeah.
So I went through all of it. I spent probably about $20,000 cleaning it all up. Put it on market for $219. I think we ended up selling for $200. Again, in the market where you wouldn't sell overnight.
Yeah.
So I netted probably 70-ish grand in my pocket when it was all said and done because I represented myself on the sale.
Yeah, and you had probably some carrying costs and stuff like that, and closing costs and all that good stuff. Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you did that in large part because you had no other option. And similar to my first renovation, I put siding and I put windows into a purchase plus improvement mortgage. Mm-hmm. So I was really excited. I got some new windows in there and I got some new siding. So the place looked way better like right away. But everything else there, I did myself with the help of my dad. And so that included, very first thing is I opened up like a pass through in this wall, right?
Yeah.
Wall between the kitchen and the living room, did a little pass through.
Yeah. Just
cut it out. Wasn't load bearing, hung the drywall and tried to mud it in. My dad's very handy, so he helped with that. Baseboard, laminate flooring, painted every inch of it.
You did all the flooring?
Got all 4 colors, yeah. We did it together, my dad and I. I think my father-in-law too. Just kind of chipping away at it. And then from there, so I did that one pretty much all ourselves in terms of the actual cosmetics. Again, I didn't do the siding, didn't do the windows. And then the next property kind of was a little bit bigger of a renovation. I started bringing a couple guys to do like drywall work. But again, I was in there painting, doing some baseboard and things like that. Another property, my father and I did tile, which was a nightmare.
I will say I did all the like again, small stuff that I felt comfortable doing would be all light fixtures as well.
Yeah.
And any of that kind of stuff that you could do, like small things like that, I handled any of that kind of crap to try and alleviate, because trying to get people to do small random bull crap was so expensive.
Yeah.
Hooking in a new toilet, hooking up a new vanity, I did that. which I
Totally.
shouldn't be doing necessarily, but
Yeah. And I always look at that, and people ask me about this all the time, because some people are a bit more fortunate where they have the option, and maybe they would obviously prefer to do it for free, do it themselves, whatever. But they have just enough means where maybe they can hire some people.
yeah,
And they always ask, what you would do. And, the numbers have been pretty tight historically, and they're going to be really tight coming here soon. People are going to have to resharpen their pencils and roll up their sleeves and do a bit more work, do a bit more flyer hunting, and not just be like, well, I'm going to get the nice ones. Like, no, I'm going to get the one that's on sale. Like, people are going to have to get a little bit more creative on that in this next little while if they want to, burr model stuff and flip stuff. But the other thing is just, I've told people, if you don't do it yourself, it's really hard to engage tradespeople and know what you're talking about and understand the value of stuff. And if you are at a point where your time is really worth more, that's the other time that you want to switch over as well, because it got to the point as my business started to get a little bit more productive, I realized I could make more money selling houses than fixing this home. And the one that really solidified it for me was I was working on this 2-unit property, and it was taking forever, and I was effectively doing most of it myself. Well, not that that's not true, but I was doing a lot of it myself. All the baseboards I was doing myself, hanging the doors I was doing myself, all the ticky-tack stuff, the light fixtures, some basic work to the steps. I had someone come in and install linoleum flooring, had bath fitter into the bathroom, and had person do the kitchen. And man, everything was taking so long and so long and so long. And what I realized at the end was that because the project took me, I think it took me like 4 months to get 1 unit ready and another 3 months to get the second unit ready, the combined 7 months that could have maybe been jammed down to 3 months, the savings there on the 2-unit, $3,000 times 3 months, like, man, I could have paid an extra $8,000
and been in the same place,
and been in the exact same place,
and worked less,
and then had my time back to go do something else. So that was around my 3rd or 4th property that really clicked for me. And then since that point, I have outsourced it. Like, I've got a good group of tradespeople here now. But even like installing tile, which again was one of the worst experiences of my life, because you're there on your hands and knees, like panicking that it's drying and that it's going to pop up, and like it is a nightmare. And then realizing, some old Italian dude can do it in 20 minutes way better, makes me realize what my time is worth in value. But I do, to this day, if I could do it all again, I would still want it to go through that experience. Do you feel the same? Like,
yeah,
I mean,
so
that's a hard one you went through, but you learned something from there. This is maybe why you're so stingy, I've realized now. Like, you learned that thriftiness back then.
Before I answer that, I have to tell one really quick story that I was laughing about. There was a couple hilarious moments in this house. This is maybe not the funniest thing ever, but the utility room, because it was on well, had a pressure tank and the full water system.
Oh, yeah?
And that must have been where the animals like to use the bathroom, because there was literally so much animal feces that we had to shovel it out.
Oh, God.
It was disgusting. Anyways, we shoveled it out. We broomed it. We tried to clean it as best as possible. And then I went to go get the pressure tank replaced. And sure enough, like, it was so old and rusted. The guy was down there, and the second he touched it, the whole pressure tank just disintegrated in his hand. And unbeknownst to us, there was more animal shit behind it and underneath it. And so there's a lot of water in those pressure tanks.
Yeah.
It just washed down and just mixed with the shit. And he's on his hands and knees underneath the staircase.
Like, God damn it, I should have answered this Kijiji ad.
It just washes out onto him. And I just, like, literally walked away and I just hear him go, oh, fuck. Anyways, the guy was a trooper, though. He cleaned all of it up, and then he soaked all the water up. He cleaned all the water up because he was more concerned about the fact that he's going to get my laminate wet in the basement. And
it's like, you should be more concerned about the fact you're covered in feces, my friend.
That's not muddy water, bro.
Yeah.
Anyways, to answer your question, looking back on it, when I do it that way again, yes, I think I pretty quickly transitioned to getting people to do the work, but I made an effort to make sure it wasn't so I could be out partying or spending my time relaxing. At the start, it was so I could be out making money in that same time.
Right.
And I made sure that I was making as much money or more doing other things, because my biggest thing is, don't waste your time doing stuff that you're not good at when someone who is good at it can go in there and do it, right? And I do that with any of the businesses too. It's like, I'm no good at, let's say, collecting rent, so I had to hire someone to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's the same with this, that I was no good at laying laminate, and I would spend 8 days doing this floor when someone else would spend a day. And in those 8 days, if I could sell one home or do whatever it may be at that time to make money selling cars or selling products, I could offset that. I
almost feel like it's worse when you are just handy enough that you feel you could do it yourself. And this was my challenge. I'm like, I can do that though. Like I can put that limit.
I think a lot of people face that.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I had done floors.
That's what I know
trim
guys that
and stuff
struggle that way.
before.
Yeah.
I had done trim and laminate and all those things, and it bugged me, especially because trim. I'm like, this is not like it's not that difficult to go and cut some 45s around every corner and like figure it out and get it blasted off. And they charge a fair bit to do it. But I think a lot of people struggle with that same thing, like you said, is I can do it, but you really have to weigh in the pros and cons. And if it's a rental property, you need to consider like how much extra time is this going to take me, because it's going to get offset by the fact that this is going to be rented sooner, and your time is valuable. Because sometimes searching out a better deal, like Chandler and I talk about this all the time, if we can search out one better deal per year, we could work 50% as much as we do and be in the exact same spot. And so, looking back at it, I think I transitioned fairly quickly, which I'm happy that I did. Sometimes I wish I was a little bit more involved, because even today, contractors ream off a bunch of different terms sometimes. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm an engineer, but in engineering, we don't necessarily talk about a lot of the specifics to finishing a home, right? We talk about necessarily the structure or the mechanical systems, but we don't necessarily talk about the finishings. And so that sometimes can be a bit over my head. But even now I'm realizing, like, I'll hire a project manager before I go back and learn all that stuff now. But all that to say, the market has changed, and where prices have gone up so much, and it's harder to find an easy burr, and it's harder to find that lift. All the stuff you can do yourself, and if you're just hanging out on the weekend, you should be there doing those things. And it's a great time to learn and go through it, and find a friend who maybe can do it and offer to pay them. Don't just expect because they're a friend they're going to come do it. That's what I did, and if they're listening, they're going to definitely comment that. But pay them to be there and buy the snacks. I say that to everyone. I'm like, look, if your friends are coming to help at a discounted rate, like you would be paying a company $4,000 to be here. They're going to be here for half price. Bring lunch, bring beer, bring treats, make it enjoyable as well for that experience. But again, going back to it, I would do it the same way I did. I don't think I want to be more involved than I was. But I do understand that nowadays you need to be more involved because the price limits are higher.
Well, that's the thing too. And then for a while, it's like, oh, well, I can afford to just hire people because the lift is so big. And then there's going to be some people that have to go back around and change their model a little bit, maybe to what it was and what got them started. But again, I've struggled with the fact that, especially early on, I was like, oh man, I could totally do that. I just need the time.
Are you struggling with that still?
The big shut up. Somewhat. It's still like the time, and then when you realize time is very literally money when you're renting property or flipping property, because the quicker you get it back, the less, the more money you make, right? So, and the other thing is true when people have just enough money that they sort of feel like they can hire someone, but maybe not enough money to hire all of the best right people. It's that in between that's really, really difficult. So I guess you have to kind of know your situation. Try to learn as much as possible. I do believe that you should do everything at least once. I personally believe that. I don't know if you can make a business case for that necessarily in the case of doing tile or doing this and within reason. But having
I've never laid tile.
Oh, it's not fun. So having that experience so that you can talk turkey with people when they come in, you do know what things are worth and you really understand the opportunity cost of your time. I think that's valuable. And I feel the same way about property management, because I think understanding the dynamic and the process of renting direct to a tenant is irreplaceable. Like, that is knowledge that you should have as a landlord. And I think if day one you go with a property manager, I think you are
you have to do it a little bit,
dulling your own skill set before you even start. When you make the transition is going to be about putting a value on your time and the time that the property sits vacant and going from there. But do everything once, including property management.
The one other thing I want to add in, the other reason to do everything once is you have a better grasp of what your contractors or managers are going through, and you might be able to relate with them a little bit better, because I see some people that might be a little bit disconnected by the fact that they just started out dealing with bigger projects and they've always just paid people, and so they have no grasp or concept or ability to rationalize or kind of connect with their contractors and their people. And people don't love, like the people that work for you are not going to love it if you're just an asshole because you're like just beating them up on price with no understanding of what it takes.
Yeah.
I think it's important. Like if you, like you said, if you've laid tile, you probably have a whole new appreciation for the guys that are in there doing it, and you're a bit more respectful of their cost, of their time, and what all goes into it, versus just being like, what's the best price you can give me? Give me the, like, you know what I mean?
Exactly. It also like gives you more foresight. Like, oh, okay, on the next project, I realize that these floors are going to be an issue because these two floors are not level. In order to get this floor level with that floor, I'm going to have to either build this floor up or strip that floor down. You know, how's that all going to look? So the knowledge is super valuable. Again, I know that's not a clear-cut answer. I was thinking about this because I have a client who literally is about to do a property, and he's looking at the same thing. I'm like, man, that pass-through that you should put right there is exactly what I did 14 years ago or 13 years ago. You can do that yourself, and you will save money doing it, and I think it would be a good experience, but it's not for me to say.
Here's one thing I'll say, and here's a way to maybe get your answer, is figure out what your value is on an hourly basis. That's honestly what I've always done. I'm like, I gross X per year, so I value myself as this much per hour. And if I can get something done for less than that, it's usually a go. We've talked about that on here before. Now, that's only applicable if you're out there making that money during that time. Again,
sitting around your underwear,
if you're
maybe not.
I feel like that was a personal attack.
Well, it was a little bit.
Okay, so if you're just sitting around and it's time that you could be doing this, you should be out there doing it. But if it's time that you're like, I'm busy working, I'm making money, I'm doing other things, then I think you make a value to that, and you can put that against what you're going to pay other people to do.
I also think that if you believe in investing in yourself, you can also put some sort of dollar value on the education that you could learn. There's a lot of people out there trying to sell you different products if you're a landlord or want to be landlord. If you're willing to pay for that education, there is something to be said for paying for the education of doing some of these things yourself and learning it. And that type of learning, it costs you one way, but it's not cost out of pocket. It's time, it's energy, but it is invaluable. So hopefully there was something you took from that. We've got to wrap up here. As always, thanks so much for listening. Really excited about next week's episode and the episode after that, because we're going to talk about whether or not this is the bottom of the market, and then we're going to talk about our projections into next year. So lots of great stuff coming up. If you listen to this point, please don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, leave a comment, and check out our Patreon. The membership there is growing. We've got some huge announcements coming on that, so check it out.
Love you guys. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for watching the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. Don't forget to subscribe. But also check us out on Instagram and TikTok. You can find all the links below. Thanks again for checking us out.